am your host, Mediocre Tutorials and Reviews, back in here with yet one more video. Joined today by a very special returning guest, Ray.
What's up? I'm back.
She's back. She's back.
I'm back.
And ready to chat. All right, so we're going to get to the video here in a second. Ray, we were talking right before this video. I just clicked this video on it. You were telling me something that one of your elders in your family said to you, and I wanted to have a conversation about it.
Let's do it.
All right, so what did they say?
So there was a scenario when I had acquired another degree, and just been working on my career and things like that. But one of the things that, and I've heard from multiple people, is you have smarted yourself out of a man. Yeah, heavy.
You have smarted yourself out of a man. And so when I say elders, this is probably someone with more of a traditional background.
A boomer.
This is a baby boomer.
A boomer.
It's a baby boomer. All right. And we often talk about, roles and relationships, right? So like your initial reaction to hearing, this is like what, your graduation day?
Mm-hmm. Close to it.
This is close to it. And this person said, you have gained a level of knowledge that will make a man feel insecure. Is that essentially what she's saying?
Essentially.
Yeah, and right. So like, how did you feel when she said that? What did you think? Dang,
that's kind of messed up. I thought I was doing everything that I was supposed to do, because coming up in the 80s and the early 90s, it was, I wouldn't call it a feminist movement, but it was be smart, work hard, advance. Anything you can do, I can do better. Remember, that was on the commercials, and we were conditioned to try to be equal to the boys, and so it was like, dang, I thought I was doing everything that I was supposed to do, but that somehow could make me inadequate as a woman in the eyes of a baby boomer.
So you think it makes you, it could potentially make you inadequate in the eyes of a baby boomer in terms of finding a relationship, but do you feel like that holds true with those in your own generation?
Somewhat. Not as much as the baby boomers, but I do think that some of those values were passed down to our parents, which were after the boomers. I don't know what they're called.
Gen X?
Were they X? Whatever they were. And then to us, just like any other values, they were passed down, they trickled down, not as prevalent. But I think there's some millennial women that feel that way. For sure. All you care about is your career, is some of the commentary, and it's some of those assumptions sometimes are definitely at play.
Yeah, I think there's also a thought where, if you think about like the differences between men and women, and men are often looking for someone who they can feel like they can lead, right? Like that they can lead them to the promised land and back. And it's almost as like, well, the more educated that you get, and maybe he's not as educated traditionally, like that traditional definition of the word, that he may deselect you because he feels like he can't bring that very basic component to the table, right? Like we are natural born problem solvers, and if we don't feel like we have the tools to solve your particular problem, we may not want that type of relationship. I still think like, but the onus is still a little bit on the dude as well, because you should be, regardless of a traditional education, you shouldn't let that deselect, right? You should still either work on yourself to get the most amount of education, or bump the formal means of communication. I know a lot of people who are super smart that never went to school. Super smart. I know people in jail that are intelligent as hell. I mean, just because they made a couple of mistakes doesn't mean that they're not smart as shit. Right? So I think that the problem of that is still, it goes a little bit on the dude as well. So like, but you don't feel like it's as true, but it is a little bit. So have you had situations in the past where you feel like you started talking about your education and the dude has deselected you because of that scenario?
I haven't felt it in real time, but I'm sure it's happened. And I had a conversation with one of my friends. I don't personally do this, but one of my friends, she has 2 masters and a law degree, and she doesn't tell dudes. No, she doesn't tell them when she goes on dates with them. I'll tell guys like what I work, my work, how I own a business, things like that as it comes up. But I don't lay my resume out in front of guys when I first meet them. But I don't do that when I meet anybody. But one of my girlfriends, she intentionally does not mention, by the way, I'm a lawyer, I have an MBA, an MHA, multiple, streams of revenue and income. She intentionally doesn't mention it. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And one time, one time she had a scenario when a guy, he tried to poo-poo on her a little bit. And nobody is above anybody, in my opinion, based off your degree. But he had an associate's degree, and he tried to poo-poo on her like, your life is nothing. Like, I'm out here, and I got this, and I'm all this. And she had to, like, fire back, like, well, actually, I've got the AK-47 of education.
Wow.
And he had the 22. But he tried to poo-poo on her. But it's unfortunate that she felt like that.
She poo-pooed on him after... So he thought that she didn't have a degree?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, because she intentionally didn't tell him. And I'm sure there's other women that do that. Like we talked about this a little bit before, if you're the Oprah of women or whatever, which I hope to be on Oprah one day, put it out there, and you meet a guy and he's not so much of a Stedman, then you might be like, ooh, I probably don't want to tell him I'm Oprah because he's going to run.
Is it fair? Do you think that it's fair that a woman has to feel, place themselves, right, like in a way, like when we think about, being a real feminine woman, you think of like a component of, being a rib to a man. So is it fair that you have to withhold nuggets of your life in order to seem attractive?
No, it's not fair at all. It's bullshit. Do I think it's a reality in some scenarios? Absolutely. But is it fair? No. But I do have guy friends who are starting to do that because they want to avoid gold diggers. So I have some male friends who are pretty successful, make great money, and they withhold their resume. But they're withholding it for a different reason. They're withholding it because they don't want a gold digger to latch on to that. And then sometimes there are women who are withholding it because we hope he does latch on. So it's like the opposite reason for withholding, like how great or educated or your accomplishments. So yeah.
So then what I don't want to put this question on you.
Oh,
so
no.
we can go back and forth, but from a solution perspective, right? Is there any way we can step into a light where there's a solution for that? And then also, what I think your grandmother was saying, along with that, is you should have spent more time focusing on a relationship as opposed to an education.
Yeah.
Talk, like, in understanding that, like, talk to me about what that means for, right? Like, does that mean that generations going in the future should not be getting as much education?
In regards to getting a relationship, I don't know. Now, when you're talking about those student loans,
right.
Master's degree required, and we're gonna pay you $15 an hour. Like, ooh, I don't know if education's worth it so much for that reason. But as far as should you focus on relationships then education, I don't know. I really don't know. I really don't know. Maybe a blend of some education and some romance, because you can do both. But as a woman, especially, let's say you're in a underrepresented field, so you're going to go and be an astrophysicist, which is obviously an underrepresented area for women. You're going to have to focus and grind a lot harder to kick in that glass ceiling.
Right.
So will you have the energy left to make a relationship your priority? Probably not.
Probably not.
If you're kicking in some glass ceilings, you're probably tired.
So in 2019, so what do we tell women that are want to be INDEEFE, right? Like, and then
is that how you spell it?
No, I messed that up. It's been a while since I heard that song. But what do we tell them that want to pursue, all right, and be bosses in the workplace, right?
Yeah.
Like, what do we tell them if they want to be, right, but then they also want a relationship, right?
Yeah.
Like, it almost sounds as if there's like this like there's two different dichotomies of things going on. You know, you have a pursuit of your own life, of becoming educated enough to do things really well, but then you have, which is traditionally not what it was. Usually, you know, like what's the rates of stay-at-home moms compared to now to way back in the day? When, but then you also have, you know, in your 20s to focus on, you know, finding a suitable mate, right? Like, but there's only 24 hours in a day.
There are.
Right. So like, so, you know, I think I heard you say that it's blended. It can be blended, but you know, what do you think that there's other solutions to that, or is it just depends what you value?
I think in our careers we have to turn up our traditionally masculine characteristics, stereotypically masculine characteristics like speaking up and taking over the meeting or things like that. And we have to find a delicate balance to be able to turn that off in our personal lives. And that's very difficult to do. It's a balance. So if you can figure that out earlier, how to be a boss at work, and not that you can't be a boss at home, because plenty of women run households, but try to don't give up that mother, daughter, sister, wife in you and become your career.
That's super real. Can you talk about, like, so at what point did you figure out, like, the personality, right, the workhorse, the, you know, maybe, you know, more aggressive in meetings, right? Like, at what point did you figure out that those personality traits may not necessarily work well when you're trying to be a rib? I mean,
when I was like 30.
Okay.
Like in the past 2 years.
Right.
but I read a lot of books. Yeah. And so what I try to do, I encourage people to read books, you know, take some of what your family and friends and elders say as valuable, because they do have value. But I read a lot of books, and so I'll challenge myself. If I find myself reading a career book, so like Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office, I read that this year, and it is basically how to be a savage in corporate America, not a bitch, but how to navigate that and dominate within corporate America. And so I'll challenge myself to Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office, and Why You're Not Married Yet. And so I'll read both of those books, because I need to be able to I want to be successful at everything. I want to be successful in my career, my business. I want to be a better everything, including girlfriend, wife, mother, sister, daughter, friend. So in my early 20s, it was a lot of career-oriented books. You know, Secrets of Six-Figure Women, things like that. And as I've gotten older, it's more, okay, how to better communicate in general, how to be a better friend, how to prepare to be a wife, stuff like that. So I encourage reading a lot, because we do not have the answers.
Right, no, and we're always trying to figure out through experience, but I think with women there's a time horizon, there's a clock, right? Because at what point was it 35 or 36 that it's considered geriatric pregnancy?
Yeah, they tell us you're going to be a high risk pregnancy
at
35.
At 35, so it's like damn, like you know, the things that we do into figuring that out. It's almost as if the education is always what matters, right? The experiential learning from your elders, right? Although what your elders said, you know, is, you know, probably completely different than something that you have like thought about in the past. At least it gave you a different side of the coin to take whatever component of information out of that to move in well with kind of going into the future. Yeah.
And there's timetables. You mentioned timetables. Some of the timetables work against us for real, because we graduate from high school 17, 18, 19 if you might have fell back a year.
It happens.
It happens. But some point in that 17 to 19 range. So then you're expected, at least our generation, go to college. College takes 4 to 5 years for some people. But those are the peak of our childbearing years from a biological standpoint. I'm not a nurse, but I do know that. And then, so it's like, wait, I'm supposed to be capitalizing on the peak of my biological years, but you told me to go to college. And if you go get a master's, which is almost required nowadays, you're tacking on an extra year and a half, 2-3 years. So those timetables are not adding up.
It's not a lot of time.
Like childbearing years, prime years, prime college years. And then once you finish all of that college and education, now you have to focus on your career. And those first 5 years are crucial. They set the pace. So now you're looking at...
That's real.
You might have finished college at 22 if you did 4 years, and then do a master's. You're 25, 26 maybe. I was 23, but I was like that with my master's. And so, but nonetheless, then 5 years in your career, that puts me at 28. Those prime years are off.
Those are prime years, yeah.
So those timetables, that's a rough timetable.
It's a rough timetable, and it's one that I don't think is talked about enough, right? Like until we can figure out another way to have children, right? Like I think like at some point they're just gonna take your eggs at 20 and put them in a cryo chamber and just freeze them, and then whenever you're ready, they'll just grow that bitch in a lab somewhere.
Yeah,
you know,
probably.
I think at some point that'll probably be a reality.
Yeah.
So you can be 40 and then have a child that was conceived out of a 20-year-old egg with your same genetic.
And the sperm. We don't talk enough about that. So there's the high-risk pregnancy, but then there's geriatric sperm too.
Is there?
They have their issues.
What?
20-year-old sperm is not the equivalent of 45-year-old sperm. They are not equal.
I gotta do some research.
And it's nothing wrong with having children older, but we put a lot on women, and there are definitely some health risks with what men are producing in later years.
I can't combat that right now. I need to look up whatever studies.
Do some research.
I'm gonna do some research before I start talking out my ass.
Yeah,
all right, we gotta do some Google searching because I have not heard about that.
Yes.
I mean, I would assume there would be some degradation in sperm count, right? The older that you get.
Yeah, I think quality too, but don't quote me. I'm not a medical professional, but I believe that there are some changes in quality. Your body changes. Your hair, you guys lose your hair. Hair changes, body changes, everything's changing. What makes you think the sperm's not changing? Everything else is changing and that stays constant?
And listen, I don't have any evidence, any scientific evidence to dispute, so I'm just not going to dispute based off of the way I feel right now. But we'll leave it there.
That's smart.
And then we'll do some Google searching the next time you come through. All right, so listen, that was a very impactful statement, I can tell, that your elder made.
Yes.
So, you know, she said, I mean, you know, was there a little bit of hater in her? You know, like maybe she's looking at you like, I wish I was 20-something years old again. You know what I mean?
I don't think so. I think that it was a values thing. And I think generationally, just like how we switch jobs more often as millennials, and they think we're crazy for that. Why are you switching jobs? Just stay where you are. Right. Just keep going. Why don't you have kids? I don't think it's a hater thing from our elders. I think it's they genuinely don't understand. Like, dang, you got a new job? Why'd you go and do that? Just stay. And it's like, pensions are gone, honey. Yeah,
right. It's not the same that it used to be.
And they will fire us in a heartbeat in these days and times. But I don't think that was at play. I think it's a genuine, like, confusion. Like, what are y'all millennials doing? Not having kids, putting off marriage, getting degrees, changing jobs.
What are
y'all are crazy.
What are y'all millennials doing getting all smart? Yeah. You know, just go marry up. I mean, that's what she's saying. Yeah, just go marry it. Just go find someone else with money. And I hear what she's saying, and I think, like, anything that's a tradition has to be put into question, always. I think that we're in different times now.
Times are different.
But I think one thing that won't change, at least from what I've observed, is our biology. Our biology might evolve. But we're hitting a time right now where the rapid rate of technology is really changing how we communicate. It's changing our values. But I think that there's things that men do and how they think, and there's things that women do and how they think, and those things are happening. Those things won't change. But when you think about some of the traditional things that were created, like I think a marriage document is one of those traditional things that were created, that I think the benefit is starting to be challenged, and I think for proper reason. For proper reason. But a biology, at least in our lifetime, will not change. So it's almost like anything that's being told to you that is a part of the culture that's a new thing. Like, you know, we won't get into it, but like, you know, this whole education, like do your own thing, that's a new thing. And I'm not combating all that. I think for me, it's attractive to come across a young woman that's very educated. It's super attractive to me. So I would never say don't go follow your dreams and your passion. But you need to put into question traditions. Yeah. Just as well, you need to put into question new information that people throw at you. I think you should just question everything and just keep on reading and just pick out what is going to get me to the most happiest life. Yeah. And just close that gap. Yeah.
Agreed.
All right, so let's end off the video right there. Any last comments to say?
No.
Before we wrap up?
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for sharing. Listen, questions, comments, concerns, you already know what to do. Mediocre tutorials and reviews at gmail.com. These are the type of conversations that we got to keep on bubbling up. All right? We got to keep on doing that. Keep on sending your video requests. Keep on sending your video reactions. And we'll take it from there. All right? Ray!
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming through. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right? Till next time, YouTube.